ونفس بعدد كل معلوم لك. اللهم صل صلاة كاملة وسلم سلاما تاما على سيدنا محمد الذي تنحل به العقد وتنفرج به الكرب وتقضى به الحوائج وتنال به الرغائب وحسن الخواتيم ويستسقى الغمام بوجهه الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه في كل لمحة ونفس بعدد كل معلوم لك. اللهم صل صلاة كاملة وسلم سلاما تاما على سيدنا محمد الذي تنحل به العقد وتنفرج به الكرب وتقضى به الحوائج وتنال به الرغائب وحسن الخواتيم ويستسقى الغمام بوجهه الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه في كل لمحة ونفس بعدد كل معلوم لك. اللهم صل صلاة كاملة وسلم سلاما تاما على سيدنا محمد الذي تنحل به العقد وتنفرج به الكرب وتقضى به الحوائج وتنال به الرغائب وحسن الخواتيم ويستسقى الغمام بوجهه الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه في كل لمحة ونفس بعدد كل معلوم لك. اللهم صل صلاة كاملة وسلم سلاما تاما على سيدنا محمد الذي تنحل به العقد وتنفرج به الكرب وتقضى به الحوائج وتنال به الرغائب وحسن الخواتيم ويستسقى الغمام بوجهه الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه في كل نفس بعدد كل معلوم لك الله.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Dear brothers and sisters, the program will begin in a few minutes. I hope everyone is ready and be patient as we will begin shortly. Thank you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam bil lisani yafqahu qawli. First of all, let us begin our program tonight with Ummul Kitab Al-Fatihah. Amin, amin, ya Rabbil Alamin. Dear our honorable guests, Brother Asyraf Hakimi as panel 1, Brother Anas Hayyan, panel 2, and Brother Syahmi Amin as our moderator for tonight. Last but not least, my dearest brothers and sisters, welcome to SICE Talk 1.0, Undi 18. I, Ammar bin Adlan, will be your MC for tonight. But before we start, I would like to give a general overview of this program. This program discusses various topics regarding students' concerns and challenges. Through this program, students will get the opportunity to learn and to be more open-minded to learn and to be more open-minded about this issue, despite having challenges in gaining the truth. Hence, for this series, the theme is related to the current situation in which students need to adapt to a new voting system. As a reminder, at the end of the session, there will be an attendance and feedback form. Next, in order to gain barakah throughout the program tonight, let us begin with the recitation of dua. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين يا الله يا رحمن يا رحيم. Only to you do we express our gratitude for all of your grace and blessings. In conjunction with today's ceremony, we request your inayah and tawfiq, and we ask that you grant us prosperity and happiness. Open our hearts to receive knowledge useful for the religion, nation, and country. We beseech you to shower your abundant grace on this occasion. May all of our efforts to make this event a success be met with your blessings and guidance. Indeed, we have gathered today because of you, O Allah. We gather to gain knowledge, exchange ideas, strengthen silaturahim, and provide support in order to improve our state and performance. We ask for your strength, O Allah, so that we who are present today can perform all good deeds, and we seek refuge in you from every evil. O Allah, bestow knowledge on us and adorn us with good conduct and glorify us with piety and bless us with long-lasting health. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين آمين آمين يا رب العالمين. And without further ado, I welcome Brother Syahmi Amin as our moderator tonight to continue with the program. Please welcome.
Okay, thank you, Brother Amar, as MC. You can hear me, right? Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good evening I wish to all of you. Welcome to SICE Talk 1.0, Undi 18, Undi 18. My name is Syahmi, your moderator for today's forum. Okay, as we all know, Undi 18 is a current big issue, which enables you to think about the topics that we have highlighted, and we are trying to solve the issues together by sharing beneficial and interesting ideas, which will be delivered by our guests and speakers. Before that, I would like to remind the audience that we will be having a Q&A session by the end of this forum. So if you have any question, kindly submit them in the comment section in YouTube. Okay. Before we proceed with the forum, I would like to introduce our panelists today. Our first panelist is Brother Muhammad Asyraf Hakimi bin Zaid, IIUM SU officer from Office of Education 22 to 2023. Okay, how are you today, Brother Asyraf?
Hi, Assalamualaikum. I'm fine, thank you. How are you, Syahmi?
Okay, Alhamdulillah, I'm good. Okay, next is our second panelist, Brother Anas Hayyan bin Ahmad Zakwan, IIUM graduate from Department of Political Science. He is also president of IRKHSSS 2020 to 2021. How are you, Brother Anas?
Alhamdulillah, I'm fine, brother. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, before we start our forum in detail, let me explain about our topic today. On 27th July, recently, the Dewan Rakyat has passed the Bill of RUU Constitution Amendment 2019 by lowering voting age limit, automatic voter registration, and lowering age of candidates that will be contesting for the election to 18 years old. So my first question to Brother Asyraf, pertaining to our topic today, would you mind sharing what is Undi 18 and what are the reasons for the enforcement of Undi 18?
All right. Before I start, can I get confirmation? Am I audible? Yes.
Yes, you're
thank you very
audible.
much. All right. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everyone. Thank you, the organizer, and also the moderator. Brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, the thing that we are discussing today is not merely a small issue or a sub-issue, but instead this issue is regarding the highest law of the Federation. And this law is regarding our beloved Constitution. And yes, of course, it's a huge thing to be discussed. Since 65 years ago, we all know that our Constitution was started, created, and developed by the Reid Commission, led by Lord Reid. And now actually, from the very beginning of the creation of the Constitution, it has been suggested by the Reid Commission that our country first use parliamentary democracy. Second, the representative will be selected through the election, and only people of Malaysia who is above the age of 21 years old is qualified to be the voters and become the candidate of the election. Now, the very first question that arises here is that, why 21 years old? From the very beginning, why does the Reid Commission particularly write 21 years old in our Constitution? We all know that a Reid Commission that create our Constitution not just barely create the idea of 21 years old by themselves. No, but instead, the Reid Commission gathered the idea and the suggestion from the people of Malaysia themselves. And it was suggested by Malaysia themselves during that particular time that the age of 21 years old is the most suitable age to be qualified as voters in that particular matter of time. Now, the second question here is, why do Malaysians themselves have the opinion that 21 years old is the most suitable age during that time? As mentioned by our moderator just now, during July 2019, when Tun Mahathir tabled the motion of Undi 18 in the parliament, he said that actually there are two reasons for this. There are two reasons why Malaysians choose 21 years old. The first one is because during 50s and 60s, most of the Commonwealth countries during that time put the bar of 21 years old to be qualified as voters. So they just ikut negara-negara Commonwealth ketika itu. But the second reason is what interested me the most, because during that time, at the age of 21 years old, umur rakyat Malaysia masih rancak untuk melanjutkan pelajaran. And we know back then, it's very difficult to enter into the university until 1990s. So the spirit back then was, oh, kau dah susah-susah masuk universiti. Kemudian kalau kau dah masuk universiti, kau takkanlah nak leka dengan politik, benda itu merugikan engkau. Itu kepercayaan kita dulu. And that's a big no during those time for youth to be involved in the politics. But after the Second World War, most of the world's biggest country, including Commonwealth countries, changed their rules. They lowered the age of voters from 21 years old into 18 years old. But Malaysia maintains the age of 21 years old until 2019. Now, the third question here is, can we say that after Second World War until 2019, can we say that Malaysia totally ignores the idea of decreasing the age of voters? Some might say, yes, we totally ignore that idea. But in my opinion, the answer is no. Because when I attached to the parliament, during my research with my friends, during our internship actually, since 1980s, there are a lot of time, our members of parliament, especially from House of Representatives, had frequently asked the Prime Minister when we will decrease the age of voters from 21 years old. And even in 1970s and even in 1980s, especially Lim Kit Siang, thank you, Lim Kit Siang has pushed the government to lower the age of voters until the year 2000 and 2010, sampailah kita ada Pakatan Rakyat, still questioning the government on the same issue. But the law remains no change because there is no urgency from the government until 2019. Sampailah Syed Saddiq yang daripada UIA lah tu, has complete the idea and the move to reform our age of voters. But if we want to say that Syed Saddiq is the pioneer of the sole rider of this idea, I don't agree with that too. Because in my opinion, the idea of reformation has started even from the 1971. Even it stated in the Buku Harapan, which walaupun bukanlah kitab suci kata mereka, tapi tetaplah idea tu ada. Now the next question is, after almost 40 or 50 years, which firstly mentioned in the parliament, why 2019 and now is the most correct time to lower the age of voters? In the 14th general election, our last general election back then, we have seen the move and the voice from people that want change. We have seen a very strong and solid government can be beaten in the election. And since then, the voice of reformation of our national politics has totally changed. And with the idea of Undi 18, we will have, kalau kata Tun M waktu dia bentang tu, kita akan ada lebih daripada 7.8 juta pengundi baru lah. Imagine in the previous election, where we can see the voters really come out to cast their vote. The popular vote for Pakatan Harapan is around 5 million. Barisan Nasional around 3 million, and PAS alone around 2 million. Now imagine with this new 7.8 million new voters, how this Undi 18 can totally change the political landscape in our country. And here, why we can say that youth voice is totally valuable. And that's the reason also why YB really want to implement this Undi 18, because any party that lead to this change, they will get the mileage. But to say that Pakatan Harapan alone is the game changer is not correct, because in my opinion, as a law student, I see that the real turning point of Undi 18 or the involvement of student in national politics was in 2011, in a law case decided by the case of Muhammad Hilman and Graduand Malaysia, whereby the story of this case is like this. There are a group of students, undergraduate students from the course of political science, macam korang juga, from UKM, were caught presenting a campaign during PRK, Pilihan Raya Kecil in Hulu Selangor in 2010. The appellant were found to have in the possession benda yang berkaitan dengan barang politik lah. Dan perkara ini, UKM send them a notice, require them to appeal in the tribunal because they have been charged with a breach of Section 15 AUKU or UCCA, macam yang kita tahu, which this Section 15 prohibit the involvement of students in the national politics. And what interested me here is that the appellant, political science student here, they challenge the allegation made by the university on the ground of Section 15 was contravened to the Article 10 of the Federal Constitution, which gives the rights and freedom of association to every Malaysian. In the judgment, the court held that this Section 15 has ultra bias to the Article 10 of the Federal Constitution, and therefore, this Section 15 is unconstitutional and it is invalid. Bagi saya cerita ni power sebab student sendiri yang challenge the validity of our national law. Tadi itu student UKM. Macam mana pula kalau student IIUM? Then how? And that's why I want to bring the attention here. We have seen that AUKUS law prohibit the involvement of students in the national politics. What about IIUM student? Because we know that IIUM student is not bound to the AUKU in total. Now, since IIUM student is not totally bound to AUKU or UCCA, we're still bound to IIUM SDR. IIUM students disciplinary rules. Kalau waktu kita tahu itu kita dapat buku awal-awal, tak tahu lah sekarang dapat ada kan. But however, in my opinion, this SDR is more modern instead of AUKU. Why? Because in SDR, there is no total prohibition to impede the involvement of IIUM student in the politics. Yang ada hanyalah Section 20, which stated that students shall not be a member of unlawful A, society, B, political party, inside university and outside university. Which means, as long as that party is registered, or that political party is registered, it's lawful, which means IIUM students is allowed to join that political party. But this is my personal interpretation lah, not as IIUM student union. Nanti kalau nak tahu kena tanya legal officer punya ni lah, legal office kan. But in my opinion, that is the rule, and that is why I'm saying that this rule of IIUM is more modern than AUKU. Now, what is the correlation between my explanation on IIUM SDR and AUKU and Undi 18? Because if we want to encourage the involvement of students in the national politics, kita tak boleh sekadar berhad dengan diikat oleh undang-undang macam AUKU. And since the court has declared that Section 15, which impede the involvement of students in national politics, is unconstitutional, that means students can be involved in politics, which means students have the rights in politics, which means students have the right to vote in the election. Brothers and sisters, now coming back to the issue of Undi 18, from the starting, we have discussed that the initial law in our country, the movement to push the constitutional amendment until the turning point of the success of Undi 18 in Malaysia. Now I want to bring you a new story, which is Undi 18 in Malaysia has been approved in the parliament and has been gazetted. We all know that Syed Saddiq, macam tadi, was one of the main characters in this amendment. However, it shall be noted that this constitutional amendment will not be succeed and complete without the support from the opposition party, and not just because of the government has not the two-third majority, but what I mean is in terms of idea, because the initial idea proposed by Syed Saddiq back then is that, okay, the age of voters shall be lowered until 18 years old, but then here come the opposition and make suggestion on the improvement. The concern from the opposition is, especially as suggested by YB Taqi dan Hassan during that time. First, it's not fair to give right to vote for 18 years old, but the age of candidate remain 21 years old. It's not a stable composition. Second, YB Taqi dan Hassan said in the debate during the parliament session that currently there are millions of young voters who have not registered as the registered voters yet. Then, if we impose a new law to increase the numbers of voters, even in that current situation, voters yang sedia ada lagi pun tak habis registered lagi. And after a series of engagement and debate, here come the main three effects of Undi 18, as mentioned by our moderator just now. First, all Malaysians above the age of 18 years old are qualified voters. Second, all Malaysians above 18 years old also qualified to be candidate in the election. And third, all Malaysians above the age of 18 years old will be automatically registered when they enter at 18 years old. And there is no need for another registration to be a qualified voter. And this law has been gazetted and been sealed by Warta Kerajaan during December 2021 at the end, sebab akhirnya court juga yang perintahkan untuk government buat. So just one last one before we move into the next round. What I want to also emphasize here, because since from the beginning I emphasized that this constitutional amendment is involving the amendment in the is involving a huge part in the constitution. What's next? I agree that we already have the court order to oblige the government to implement the Undi 18. There is no problem in the parliament or in the bill, but with due respect, in my opinion, there will be confusion on the state matters in terms of qualified age to be the candidate for the election. Because kalau ahli parlimen punya qualification memanglah under federal constitution, but for state, they already have their own state constitution on the qualified age of candidate. Initially, there is no conflict because all state ikut je apa yang Federal Constitution dah buat, Selangor dah buat, Perak dah buat, except for Johor. It's a bit complicated because in their state legislative assembly, they have passed this motion to make 18 years old as qualified candidate. But in the end, Sultan of Johor has denied the law and did not consent to the motion. And for Johor, it's not like Federal Constitution, whereby the law will still be valid even Sultan has not consent to it. But for Johor Constitution, any amendment made to it, even passed in the state assembly, will not be a valid law if it has not been consented by the Sultan. Yes, we respect that Johor has the right to do so, but in my opinion, there will be difference of law which might lead to a big confusion. But after all, biarlah Johor dengan keputusan dia, apapun rakyat Johor dan kita sebagai rakyat Malaysia, we still have the right to vote, as long as we are above the age of 18 years old. I think that's all for round number 1. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brother Asyraf. That is very insightful. So then we know that the Undi 18 initiative is, the history is very long, since 1971, right? So the usaha sangat banyak lah. Okay, for the next question is for Bro Anas. In your opinion, do the importance and advantage of Undi 18 outweigh the voting age of 21, besides which is the relevance of Undi 18 at this current time, especially with the continuous development of the technology as well as the perspective or thought of the younger generation regarding political situation and the governmental administration in our country. So I'll pass to the Brother Anas.
Thank you, brother. Is my voice okay?
Okay, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Brother Syahmi Amin. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. First of all, I would like to thank Spiritual Islamization and Community Engagement Council, IRKHSSS Society, and for IRKHSSS, Secretary of Political Science, as well as Secretary of Quran and Sunnah, POSSA. I think we can see here the role of IRKHSSS Society in integrating the best of both worlds, the human sciences and the revealed knowledge, with the collaborations, and I am very glad to see the way that IRKHSSS is functioning currently, and talking about a very important amendment of our federal constitution, as well as a very, perhaps one of the biggest reform in our electoral system. We talk about reform, about electoral system, perhaps right now we are currently having first past the post, and some people are suggesting proportionate representation and other kind of votes. But then this is a big step for us in terms of the amendment of reducing the voting age from 21 to 18 years old. And Brother Asyraf has explained massively in terms of the law, in terms of perhaps the background and the history. And I believe that it is very important to look at the history in terms of how it was fought since 1970s. Yeah, YB Lim Kit Siang, my MP in Iskandar Putri, he has been fighting about for it for a long time, and finally in 2019 there was finally a political will. Yeah, a political will that is not usually happen in Malaysia, but perhaps the reason that they would like to do it is because, like the question said, the continuous development of the youth and the younger people, the younger generations in our country, and mainly talking about youth empowerment. The question is asking about what does the advantages of Undi 18 outweighs than the previous voting system, which is 21 years old. And I would say that I see Undi 18 in a positive manner. Yeah? In terms of its youth empowerment, you are giving the youth their rights. It is essentially the rights for everyone to vote for their MPs, for the member of parliaments, or for their youth, for their state legislators. as well as talking about the global relevance of giving the power for the youth to vote from 18 years old. And we can also talk about giving the autonomy, meaning that once a person has gone being an 18 years old, they will have their own power, or they have their own autonomy to choose who will represent them in the parliament or in the state legislative assembly. And we could also see on an increase of focus on youth-based policy. I would like to also talk about perhaps the history a little bit, just to add, Brother Asyraf Hakimi. During or prior to the amendment of the Federal Constitution around 2018, 2019, Malaysia and Singapore was the only country in our region that still had 21 years old as the minimum voting age in the election. And I believe that we could ask a question ourselves in terms of why are we one of the only country that does not let an 18 years old to vote in our election. And it is not about them not being matured enough, or it is not about them perhaps not be able or to think wisely. Because if you could see, an 18 years old could buy a house. I think everyone is here is above 18 years old. You could sign a contract. You could serve in the army. But why can't you vote? Why can't you choose your own representative in the state legislative assembly as well as in the parliament? So I think this is the big why. Yeah. And sometimes if we ponder upon the amendment of the Federal Constitution, we could think about why is it so late? Why did we have to wait until 2019? And it was realized only until the Johor state election last year, end of last year, or on January this year, 2022. Why did we have to wait so late? I think one of the reason would be that we are lack of political will. As you know, youth, they are fueled by passion. They are burned by passion in terms of they would really see the world as a utopia. They would believe that the world should be in a better place. They would feel that the world should not have corruption. And that would be one of the reasons that the amendment came very, very late. In terms of you or the boomer, I would say they are afraid of the changes that could bring by the young people. Yeah, we could see that the history of youth activism, as well as how the youth have changed a lot of things in our country. And I would like to echo the story by Brother Asyraf, YB Hilman Ilham, even the Adun for our place in IIUM in Gombak Setia. He was one of the pioneer in terms of fighting the government with fighting our coup or University College and College University UCCA Act. And I think after the Pakatan government had come into power, it was changed totally. And I believe that until now, even if when we went from PH to PN, from now to BN, and the government cannot say no to the changes, the wave of changes that was brought in terms of, okay, Pakatan Harapan had made it start, PN has continued it. And then essentially in BN times, it was passed the changes was made into reality. So I think one of the beauty that we could also see that when I asked Ms. Kira Yusri, the co-founder of the NGO Undi 18, one of the NGO that was monumental in assisting the government in reducing the voting age from 21 to 18 years old, that essentially they only wanted to change the term in the Federal Constitution from 21 years old to 18 years old. But then, you know, politics, there are negotiation, there are lobbying, there are discussion here and there from the government, from the opposition. And during that time, there were a lot of talking about to also include a bundle of packages, not only from 21 years old to 18 years old, but as well as Brother Asyraf has mentioned, an automatic registration. In terms of you do not need to register to vote. What is the need to register to vote? You are a citizen of the country, and the SPR or the Election Commission, as well as the national registrar or Jabatan Pendaftaran Negara, you must have your details. So there is no need for you to register for you to vote. Hence, and the third thing is that there is a reduce of age of the voting legality of a person to run as a member of parliament, again from 21 to 18 years old. Hence, we could see that if the youth nowadays, if they are not satisfied with the government, they do not only need to write or tweet in Twitter, they could even run in the election in the state legislative assembly or in the parliament. Just imagine someone that is after their SPM, Sijil Pelajaran Malaysia, after SPM, after secondary school, they could even run as an MP. Is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? Of course, there is pros and cons for it in terms of whether they are matured enough or whether they are educated enough. That one I will answer it in the next question. But and when we talk about the current situation of our politics, well, there are important reforms that have been going on in our country, like Undi 18, the abolishment of the mandatory death penalty, they also table the anti-sexual harassment bill, as well as they also table the anti-hopping law. Now we will touch on anti-hopping law. The youth nowadays, when they see that after the general election, in 3 years, we had 3 prime ministers. Before this, in 60 years, we only had 5 prime ministers or 6 prime ministers. But now we already have our 9th prime minister. Hence, there is a dire need for our country to have a political reset in terms of not letting the MPs breaching the trust that was given by the voters, in terms of, if I voted for you in this place for this party, then that MP shall stay at that party until the next general election. So this is perhaps the essence of the anti-hopping law, in terms of after the general election 15, which will come very soon, perhaps, according to my reading, is that once you voted a member of parliament, they will not be able to switch sides, or they will not be able to go to other parties. For example, if you voted an MP from PAS, they have to stay in PAS till the next general elections. You cannot have that MP go to other parties. That is a breach of trust by the voters. And of course, we could debate about the mechanisms, because some people say that giving a lot of power to the party is not good. Some people are suggesting a recall system in the election. But this is a good start. At least the current government dares to change the electoral system in Malaysia. And after this, inshallah, I truly hope so that we will not be able, we won't see frogs jumping out of a party, going in another party as our representative. And talking again about the freedom of association in the Article 10 of our federal constitutions. Yes, as Brother Asyraf mentioned, that we do not have AUKU. And I think when Brother Asyraf mentioned on IIUM student disciplinary rules, I opened again my final year project, my undergraduate thesis. I wrote on campus politics in a bit in terms of the freedom of association for a student. And as Brother Asyraf mentioned, that in our rule number 20, it mentions that we are allowed to be involved in politics as long as it is lawful and it is legal. So when I asked the legal advisor of IIUM, they said that even before AUKU was, after AUKU was amended in 2019 or 2018, IIUM was one of the first university to change the student disciplinary rules to allow the students of IIUM to be a member of a political party. And it's also mentioned, this is very interesting as well, that in Article number 5, we are also allowed to organize assemblies. It mentions the role of organizing, etc., of assemblies. The rules are as follows: that they could organize, convene, call, cause to hold, organize, convene, or call, or involve in holding, organizing, convening, or calling an assembly, but it must be granted permission first. So I think this is a progressive move as well by our administration in terms of them letting us to be involved in politics. And even we could see now, IIUM Student Union is involving the national politics. One of Brother Asyraf's manifesto is on bringing politicians coming into IIUM. I hope it will be realized soon, Brother Asyraf. Yeah, I hope to see a lot of our perhaps politicians debates critically. We are a university students, and there must be contestation of ideas, and the spirit of intellectual activism must be prospered in IIUM. And we really hope that a society like IIUM Student Union, IRKHSSS Student Society could lead the change in increasing or in improving intellectual activism among the students. So lastly, I think, just to recap, I would like to perhaps commend the political will done by our politicians, even though that this may be small, but the changes will be very big. Yeah, in terms of how can we see the youth shape the country even more? How can we see that the youth are given the power? How we can see that the youth are being given the the charge to lead the country, because we need to put a stop in just realizing or in just putting our future to the old generations. Even when we talk about sustainable development goal, it is talking about whatever development that we are doing today, it is for the future of the global community. So whatever that we are doing today is for the future of our community, and the future should start, or the future should be governed by the youth, and it cannot start from a later time, but it has to start from now to ensure that everyone will have a better future after this. So I will pass it back to Brother Syahmi Amin. Looking forward for the next round, inshallah.
Okay, thank you, Brother Anas, for the perceptive answer. I agree with Brother Anas. When we talk about 18 years old, we can buy a house, we can sign a contract, but we can't vote. So it is a bit pelik lah. So we are moving forward to the second round. Before that, I forgot to inform the audience. We have 3 rounds actually. The first 2 rounds is the question from me, and the final round we will do a Q&A. Okay. Next question is to Brother Asyraf. What is the Islamic perspective on this regard? Does Islam encourage at least giving consent as early as 18 years old to participate in political or government affairs? What is your opinion, Brother Asyraf?
All right. Wow. Islamic perspective on Undi 18. It's so IIUM question. But in answering this question, I want for us not to just limit our perspective in a Shadid perspective, but we need to see Islam as a whole. Not just because we want to say Undi 18 is in line with Islamic perspective, not just because since PAS pun sokong Undi 18, then Undi 18 jadi patuh syariah. Bukan setakat itu, bukan juga setakat PAS antara parti yang sokong Undi 18, maka Undi 18 patuh syariah. Not just like that. Or even people say Tok Guru Haji Hadi selalu tak datang parlimen, tapi waktu Undi 18 Haji Hadi datang parlimen untuk vote. Itu tak menjadikan Undi 18 ini patuh syariah. But instead, I want for us to see that this Undi 18 in a bigger perspective and a larger view. Because Islam always encourage for young and youth participation. There are a lot of Quranic verses and hadith which recognize the power of youth. But before going further, let's settle the first question. Why 18 years old? what is the significance of 18 years old and Islam. In Islam, we know that we always discuss the age of maturity in Islam as the age of baligh. And but even if we want to say that 18 years old is the age of baligh, supposedly it must be lower than that lah, lower than 18 years old. So what is the significance of the age of 18 years old in Islam? If we say in the main four mazhab, Imam Shafi'i said the age of baligh for men is 15 years old, as terpakai dalam negara kita yang biasa kita amalkan based on the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which was narrated by Anas radhiyallahu anhu. Qala Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Idza istakmala al-mawlud 15 sana, kutiba ma lahu wa ma alayhi wa ukhidhat minhu al-hudud." When the child reaches the age of 15 years old, it will be written what he did and what was imposed on him and what he will be subjected on hudud. So this is the dalil for Imam Shafi'i to say that the age of baligh for men is 15 years old. Same goes to Imam Ahmad, Abu Yusuf from Mazhab Hanafi, and also Al-Awza'i. All of them agree that the age of baligh is 15 years old. Also based on the story of Ibn Umar, when he wanted to join the war at the age of 14 and 15 years old, when his story that Uritu an Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam yawmul Uhud, he come to Rasulullah and he said to Rasulullah that he want to join the Uhud war. Wa ana ibnu arba'a asyrah sana, but during this time he only 14 years old. Walam yujizni walam yarni balagh. Rasulullah did not allow him. Wa uritu alayhi yawmul handaq. This Ibn Umar come again when he was 15 years old. Wa ana ibnu khamsah asyrah sana, he was 15 years old. Wa ajazani, Rasulullah allowed him. Wara'ani balagtu, because in that particular matter of time Rasulullah said he has already baligh. Only Imam Malik and Imam Hanafi who said that baligh is the age of 18 years old, based on the dalil in Surah Al-Isra, when Allah said wala taqrabu mal al-yatimi illa billati hiya ahsan hatta yablugha ashuddah. When most of ulama interpret that yatim, that the period of yatim is after the age of 18 years old. But the main point here is, even Ibn Abbas said, the scholars who are of the opinion that the age of maturity in Islam is 18 years old is really, really small numbers. Very small numbers of scholars agree that the age of baligh is 18 years old. Then the question is, why we take this opinion? Even we follow Mazhab Shafi'i in Malaysia in general, why in terms of determining the age of voting, we follow other mazhab? This is because, to answer this, I would like to refer to one of the senators in the Malaysian Senate Hall. I think every one of us knows him very well. YB Senator Dr. Zulkifli Al-Bakri. He said that, which he was the Mufti of Wilayah back then. He said that actually what Malaysia is doing right now is in line with the opinion of Ibn Abbas, whereby even the opinion of age of baligh 81 years old is a minority opinion, but this is the safest, oldest opinion of the age of baligh. Because although there are a lot of opinion on the age of baligh, 14 years old, 15 years old, and even 21 years old, but the age of 18 years old is the safest, oldest opinion of the age of baligh. Because the latest age for baligh for women is 17 years old, based on other mazhab, not mazhab Shafi'i lah. And that's the reason why it is safe to pick 18 years old as the most suitable age for men and women to be independent and to be able to make the decision. And even if we see the story of Islam, there are a lot of Islamic prominent scholars who did the revolution for the sake of Islam at the age of 18 years old. For example, we all know the story of Usama bin Zaid, when Rasulullah SAW sent him to be the leader against the Romawi at the age of 18 years old, not merely being the participants of the war, but as the leader. And even Rasulullah said, demi Allah, Allah ciptakan Usama untuk menjadi pemimpin. And see, one of the reasons of the success of the team led by Usama during this time is because of the fresh and mature strategies structured by Usama. Same goes to the story of Muhammad Al-Fatih, Sultan Muhammad Al-Fatih. You all know him. Before the age of 21 years old, he has become the conqueror of the Constantinople. He has the idea of doing something that has never been explored by any other great leader in this world, whereby he has changed a mountain to become a place to transfer hundreds of ships to cross the river. Before Sultan Muhammad Al-Fatih, they will also see other great sultans who led the empire of Uthmaniyah, but none of them succeed. Adakah ini tanda mereka tidak hebat? Yang tua ini tidak hebat? Tidak. Mereka semuanya hebat. Mereka semua menyumbang kepada usaha untuk menjatuhkan Constantinople. But Rasulullah SAW once said, "La tuftahanna al-Constantiniyah, wa la ni'mal amir amiruha, wa la ni'mal jaysh dhalika al-jaysh." Rasulullah said, Constantinople will be opened by Muslims, and the leader is the greatest leader, and the soldiers are the greatest soldiers. And at the end, after several times of trying, after 100 times of trying, after 6 sultans, the leader that is successfully opened and conquered the Constantinople is the youngest leader with fresh and amazing idea. Idea of changing a mountain to become sea, idea of creating big cannon, meriam gergasi itu, an idea of unpredicted strategy of war. Even in Malaysia, kalau kita tengok pun the laws of Malaysia kan, the perintah nafkah has stopped at the age of 18 years old. This is stated in section 79 of Islamic Families Laws Act for Federal Territories. Same goes to the other thing. Kalau Brother Anas mentioned regarding the age of entry into contract, entry into army, we also need to remember that most of states in Malaysia also put the age of 18 years old to be qualified to marriage. And this also stated in section, if I'm not mistaken, section 8 of IFLA, Islamic Family Laws Act Federal Territories. There is mentioned that for person above the age of 18 years old, there is no need for permission from the court to marry. All this mazhab that I mentioned earlier, and also Sharia law in Malaysia, prove that the idea of allowing 18 years old to be qualified voters is in line with Islamic perspective. But brothers and sisters, do not just stop here. Our constitutional amendment is not merely about voting at the age of 18 years old, but we need the leaders with fresh ideas. We need the bravery of Usama bin Zaid. We need the creativity of Muhammad Al-Fatih in our country. Bukanlah kita nak ajak mereka berperang macam zaman dulu, macam Al-Fatih buat meriam, tidak. But my point is, we need fresh idea in our country. I'm not disregarding the idea of having experienced leader in our country, but a mixture between fresh idea and experienced leader into a cabinet will be a great recipe in our country. But sadly, if we see into our cabinet today, let us question who is the representative of youth become our minister, how many youth in the cabinet, and this kind of idea that politics that we need to change. This is the idea that I want to highlight here. The idea of Undi 18 is not totally about young voters' power, but also about the age of 18 years old who may become the candidate in the next election. We need young ideas, we need fresh ideas. Come on, when I attach to the parliament, I have seen veteran politicians who have served and been members of the House of Representatives for more than 20 years. More than 20 years on the same person. And the idea from him is just repeating the same, and the same. And in the end, he has nothing to offer to people except his money. I want to end this second round with the quote, one quote, as we all know from Qawaid in Fiqhiyah. We have one Qawaid in Sharia which say that Ma la yutimul wajib illa bihi fahuwa wajib, which means that if we really believe that we are obliged to give power to vote for youngsters because of their maturity, because of their leadership, we need to also be obliged to give power to the youngsters to lead the community. I think that's all from me for the second round. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brother Asyraf. Okay, I'm interested in the what we gain from Sirah, the encouragement from Usama bin Zaid and the story of Sultan Muhammad Fateh. It is very inspirational. Give us inspiration to participate more on the politics. Next question is for Brother Anas. Okay, I'm interested in what you said earlier. Youth on not only can run on Twitter, but we have a voice in the parliament. So, in your opinion, is Undi 18 is just a political game to get the vote from the voters who are still young, or perhaps lacking knowledge? Furthermore, from daily observation, it can be seen that there are still young people who are less interested in gaining knowledge about political issues. So, could you please enlighten us regarding the involvement of young people in politics, since they can be categorized as first-time voters?
Thank you very much, Brother. Thank you very much, Brother Syahmi Amin, for the question. I think talking about Undi 18 again, this is perhaps we cannot assume negatively for the matter. We need to look at it critically in terms of what are the technicalities with the change of the voting age from 21 to 18 years old. The youth ready? The government ready for the educational system to be reformed, as well as the election commission ready in terms of the technicalities to have an automatic voters registration. So I think the key to our discussion today in terms of the youth that are a first-time voter is on political literacy. What is political literacy? Political literacy is perhaps the knowledge about politics, and it should not be looked at a game of power. Some people would look at politics as a game of power in terms of who will be the prime minister, who will be the Menteri Besar, who will be the president of this party, but it shall be a knowledge on what politics is all about. I truly like, since my first semester as an undergraduate of political science, on what are the definition of politics. And my favorite definition is that it is an art of governance in terms of what are the ways that a government could govern a country or a state in a good manner, in terms of the state's affairs are kept in place, there are good governance, there are no corruptions, and the people are happy in terms of what are the assistance they are given to them, and the systems are a system that will eventually assist everyone to improve themselves, not only to improve the pocket of the politicians. Yeah, hence that kind of knowledge on politics shall be introduced to the people, in terms of that politics is eventually the thing that will govern our life. Look at perhaps the issue of water in Selangor or in Kelantan. The people that could expedite the issue or to solve the issue faster would be the politicians, in terms of the way that they could assist the relevant agencies to reach the people and also to the relevant agencies. So like it or not, politics are the thing that will be catering our life. Politics is something that cannot be separated from us. And Brother Asyraf has mentioned beautifully on the concept, or perhaps on the Islamic perspective on Undi 18. So everyone must contribute in their own way, in terms of if you would like to reduce the voting age from 21 to 18 years old, then everyone must play their role. For example, the government, what can the government do? There needs to be an overhaul perhaps in the educational system. In terms of that, in their secondary school, there must be a syllabus to ensure that their political literacy is already good, because after they finish the SPM, after they are already 18 years old, going out of their secondary school, they will need to vote for the next representative. If they still do not know what are the differences between the local council to the state legislative assembly to the parliament, then they would be confused at a later time during the voting days on who to vote. So at least a basic understanding on the differences of our political system, or in our political system as well as our state elections, is very vital to ensure that they will not be confused. And this must start with education to improve their literacy. So for example, there can be many NGOs to reach out to the people, not only in urban areas, but non-urban areas as well, in the pedalaman, in the villages outside of Kuala Lumpur. And also maybe just to share here, me and my friends, we just created an NGO solely to improve of access of quality education, specifically to improve political literacy. So these are perhaps the efforts that we could do. And at least if we do not have the knowledge in politics, we could share on maybe the videos that are made by these NGOs to ensure that the right knowledge or the right notions on nuances of politics will reach the first-time voters. We could see in the Malacca state election, brothers and sisters, that a student from IIUM, she ran in the state election of Sungai Rambai, if I'm not mistaken. She lost, but she was only, if I'm not mistaken, 21 years old. So she's very young, and people were doubting on her, because I heard a story that when she went to campaign, some people were asking, why aren't you in university? How can you represent us by being a student? But that is where people are skeptical about the change of the voting age. So we need to not only improve the literacy of the young, but also the literacy of the old. They could not only see that, okay, only old people could represent you, but a competent people should represent you, no matter from what are your races, how old are you, what are your age, no matter what skin color are you, what are your background. Essentially, that the literacy that we need from the people or the voters is that they should vote for someone that is competent. Don't look at perhaps their races, don't look at their religion. Maybe you need to look at it in a specific areas, but you need to find a competent people. That is my point. Because sometimes people are indulged into the politics of perhaps race and religion. They don't want to look at it from other perspectives. And then essentially, the people that they voted based solely on races and religion or skin color, for example, they are the ones that are doing corruption. This is what we don't want. What we need is a competent and fair leader. And that knowledge is also needed to be taught to our young generations as well as the older generation. And what is important is for us to guide our voters, to let them know about politics, and changes will take place eventually. Like it or not, it is already there. It is already amended. The federal constitution is already amended. So what is needed currently is for us to support each other going to the next general election. We could see that even in the state election of Johor, not many youth came out to vote. Maybe perhaps they were shocked from it. So there must be efforts from all parties from now, political parties, student union, student societies, to ensure that the notions of general election is a notion of change for the future betterment of the country or your states. So to ensure that politics is not something that is taboo, but should be something that will change the livelihood of each and every houses in your parliament or in your state legislative assembly. So I believe that we will see an influx of voters, around 7 million plus in the next general election. So I truly hope that there will be reform, that there will be more reform in terms of our overhaul of our educational system, and everyone must think critically on who to vote in the next general election to ensure that our country will be stable, our country could attract investors from outside later, and also for our country not to have these uncertainties that we are currently having. We had 3 prime ministers in the past 3 years, so I truly hope that after this, once the winning party have been chosen and the prime minister have been chosen, everyone must work hand in hand. The people must be the check and balances. The opposition, the government must ensure that whatever decisions that are made, it must be made for the people, and it must be made based on a correct decisions, not a decision that is binded with influences, perhaps from their funders or influences of any certain political parties and their agenda. So I believe that it is everyone's right to vote, but it is also eventually everyone's right to be informed, as well as to think critically on who will be your next representative, be it in the parliament or be it in the state legislative assembly. I'll give it back to you, Brother Syahmi.
Okay, thank you, Brother Anas. Hayyan. So the main point is the political literacy among the youth. Okay. So I'm interested in what you and your friends are doing, the NGO specifically for political literacy among youth. So it is a very good idea, and I admire your passion. Okay. So okay, now we are open to Q&A session to the audience online. Okay, there is one question. In your opinion, what are the proposed initiatives that the government should do for encouraging 18 years old to get involved in politics? I think I open to both speakers to answer the question.
I think since I have started both rounds, this time let's give for Anas first.
Okay. Can you start first, Brother Anas?
Thank you very much. I think it is a very good question in terms of what can the government do to ensure that an 18 years old could vote. I think it is essentially needed to have an outreach, perhaps projects by the government, as well as perhaps they could outsource an NGO to go to every school, to go to the secondary schools to teach them about electoral politics, to teach them specifically to improve their political literacy. For example, I think it is being done, the election commission or the SPR, they could go to schools to inform or to teach the students about what are politics, what are the political system in our country. But it must be done more, because once the students of the secondary schools are out of their school, they will be able to vote. Yeah, because sometimes they do not have time for politics, they will be studying for SPM. They won't even hold their mobile phones around them. So to ensure that they have the right knowledge on the electoral system is very vital. And I believe that the government must do more, because the general election is coming up. They should not only think about making sure that their parties win, but they must make sure that the rakyat, or the people, or the young people especially, have the correct understanding on politics and also governance in our country. So I believe that an outreach or a more vigorous approach shall be done by the government to ensure that political literacy has increased. And this, I forgot to add this before, but I believe that the uncertainties in our country, or the events that are happening in our countries, have improved political literacy of our youth. I think before we had 60 years rule of Barisan Nasional, for example, sometimes people will not care about the politics, because they will know that, okay, Barisan Nasional will win, so it's okay, just let it be, we are stable. But now the uncertainties that are happening has open up the youth's minds in terms of, okay, this is currently happening in our country. Why is this happening? And what are the ways that I could contribute in the governance of my country? So I believe that the uncertainties does not only have its negative, but it has also its positive effects, which eventually is not that good, to have an uncertainties or unstable government. But I truly hope that after the anti-hopping law that was tabled, after it was passed in the upper house as well as the lower house of the parliament, it will bring a new age of Malaysian politics and a new age of reform in our country.
Okay, any addition from Brother Ashraf?
All right. I look a bit different this time. I'm sorry, because I need to change my laptop. My laptop has rosak suddenly. This time I use my friend's laptop. Kamera dia dekat bawah nampak lain sikit. But nampak cerah sikit lah daripada tadi. All right. So what can government do? All right. Actually, I don't know who asked this question, but actually this type of question, like literally 100% in wording, same with 2 or 3 questions from members of the parliament that has asked to the minister on the persidangan Dewan Rakyat 2 weeks ago. Unfortunately, when I heard the answer given by the minister, it's very unfortunate because I don't get any answer. He just mentioned about political literacy, political education, without any explanation on the structured plan, how to implement that political literacy, how to implement that political education. In my opinion, if the government really want to talk about political literacy and political education, they need to have a very clear blueprint or any clear plan to prove to the people that they are very committed to this Undi 18. For example, members of the parliament has suggested the government make this political education as one specific subject in the school, not just merely as a sub-subject in mata pelajaran like sejarah or bahasa Melayu or what else. Because at the end, the people can be a judge for the government on their commitment to implement this Undi 18. We need to remember that although this Undi 18 has been approved in the Dewan Rakyat and the Dewan Negara, but the government has not implemented this Undi 18 until the court make an order to push the government to implement this Undi 18. In this situation, youth in this time will question the government. Kerajaan ni sebenarnya betul-betul nak ke youth keluar mengundi ni? Kalau kerajaan pun tak letak komitmen, apa keyakinan dan juga kepercayaan yang pemuda boleh letakkan dekat government? Government should be more aware and be concerned of the effort being put by even members of the parliament from the opposition, such as, for example, Dr. Mazli Malik. He was the lecturer in IIUM back then. He took his own initiative to make a comic to prove his effort on the political literacy. Even dia tak ada power pun as minister, but at least he has the effort. Right now, what is the effort made by the government? It's very unfortunate. And other than political literacy, in my opinion, the government can prove their commitment and also their effort in terms of law. For example, bila people muak dengan perangai politician yang melompat-lompat, at the end sekarang kita ada anti-hopping law. So I hope that this anti-hopping law and can encourage the people, oh, at least kalau aku undi ni tak adalah betul kerajaan lagi. And also when people raise their concern about sexual harassment, then come the IIUM Akta Anti Gangguan Seksual. This kind of effort, kalaulah sekalipun lah tak nak buat like literally political literacy, at least usaha-usaha macam ni bolehlah mengembalikan keyakinan rakyat kepada usaha kerajaan untuk menunjukkan komitmen mereka kepada Undi 18. That's all, Amin. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brother Asyraf and Brother Anas. So we have two more questions. The first question is from Brother Muhammad Hafizuddin. Assalamualaikum for both panel. Most of the youth had lost their trust because the issue of some political leader that involved in corruption issues and etc. What is your view regarding? The second question is from Umaira. What will happen in the future if Undi 18 does not get a reception? I think it's a reception. She means reception from rakyat lah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Brother Muhammad Hafizuddin, for the questions. I think our country has been famous globally for the corruption scandal that had happened. We were called kleptocrat, we were called corrupted government. But then we must know that the people or the voters needs to know that don't ever vote for people or vote for a politician that is tainted in corruption scandal. Yes, they can give you money, they can give you one-off assistance, for example, 100 ringgit during the voting day, but that will not change the political landscape of our country. The youth also, they must take charge in terms of these issues to ensure that our politics will be a clean politics. And also, I would like to encourage, I would like to perhaps urge the government to table the Political Funding Act in terms of they must be transparent. These political parties, I think they have unlimited amount of budget in a general election. They really have a lot of money from different funders. And these different funders are those that are controlling the government in terms of what are the policies that could be done, what are the policies that must be done, because they fund you, they give you money, so you have to do whatever that they want. So I think this Political Funding Act must be tabled very, very soon before the general election. I truly hope that the government will have the political will to do so, because this will also be a game changer along with the Political Funding Act. Because if you could see one of the, I would like to share the scenario in the US presidential election. For example, Joe Biden, not Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, a Democratic politician, which was beaten by Joe Biden, the Democratic presidential candidate, is that he does not have a funder that funds more than $500 to it. Because as if we could see that other politicians, there will be a lot of funders that may vote, may fund more than thousands of dollars. So I think at least there is transparency on who are the funders and how much do they fund. In Malaysia, can you see that? How much, who fund UMNO? And how much do they fund UMNO? Who fund keadilan and how much they fund keadilan? So I think this transparency in political funding would ensure or would attract the youth to be critical on who to vote. If these parties, for example, are funded by tycoon or by funded by a business leader, so you need to be critical in the way that you think whether, okay, is this good, or is this will this bring the country into corruption again? So that would be my answer for the first question, which is to have an improved Political Funding Act or transparency in the funding of our political parties in Malaysia. And number two, thank you very much, Sister Umaira, for the questions. What will happen if the future of Undi 18 does not get a reception? I hope that is not a dua. I hope that is just a challenge for the government to do more, and not only for the government, but also for us to ponder ourselves. For example, us, mahasiswa, what can we do? What can the students do? We cannot only rely on Secretariat of Political Science to improve the literacy of politics, but we also have everyone from different decks of from different backgrounds of studies, from the different disciplines that could bring their perspectives of politics and Undi 18. So what can I suggest is that every one of us, the students, not me, I'm not a student anymore, kan? But the students or the people or an intellectual, they must play their role to improve the understandings of politics for everyone, to ensure that the corrupts will not be elected again, as well as for Undi 18 to have a good reception. We could tell our brothers and sisters, I have a brother who is 17 years old. If general election next year is done next year, he will be able to vote. So we need to advise our younger brothers and sisters that there is a big decisions that will have to be made by everyone and including them. So I hope that it will not be in a good stage, or the percentage will be low, because the future must shape on what the youth must shape on what the future will hold. So I truly hope that the big reform will attract big voters in the upcoming elections.
Okay, thank you, Brother Anas, Hayyan. So, Brother Asyraf, do you want to add anything?
All right. On the first question regarding if the political leader involved in the corruption, then the people lost their trust on it. In my opinion, I really believe that everything will be damaged if the judiciary body being interfered. The corruption issues is actually against the law. Is totally against the law. Pergilah mana-mana negara dalam dunia ni, tak pernah ada yang membenarkan corruption. But the main difference is, are we really taking are we really taking ayat nak cakap pasal judge ni, aku dah salah, sorry, kita tukar balik ayat. Kalau judiciary body itu dikacau, tidak kisahlah in what manner, then it's not just the political the politician, that people will lose trust in the politician, but instead the whole government. People will lose trust in the legislative body and the executive body and the judiciary body. This corruption issue is not merely about the politician, but it's involved the whole government. If we fail to take action on the issues of corruption, then negara kita memang akan menghadapi satu saat yang sangat rumit. And I really believe that this issue of corruption or issue of interference on the judiciary body is being agreed by both, either in the opposition or the government, because the government said, oh, if we really don't want interference on the judiciary body, supposedly we need to put a very caliber judge lah, sebab sekarang yang government persoalkan adalah judge tu. But the opposition also said, oh, if you really don't want to interfere the judge, then the court has decided that this one person has been proven guilty. We need to accept the judgment. Both have their different view, but at the end, my key point is just don't ever interfere the judiciary body, because at the end, this judiciary body is the one who will take action and who will punish all the politician that is corrupted if it really been proven that he is guilty. If orang pun dah pertikaikan judiciary body, siapa lagi yang kita nak harapkan untuk ambil action? That's for the first question. The second question is that regarding what will happen in the future if Undi 18 does not get a reception. All right. I don't want to make presumption on all of the unfortunate event that will happen, but one message that I want to convey here is that it's not easy to make a constitutional amendment, and just if after all these challenges that we face to make this constitutional amendment to allow the age of voters at 18 years old, but the turnout voters as in PR and Johor is very, very shameful. What is the worth and the value of our hard work on the constitutional amendment? untuk mencapai tahap pindaan perlembagaan ini bukan satu tugas yang mudah. Bahkan kerjanya payah. Satu pindaan perlembagaan merupakan satu sejarah. And if this Undi 18 adalah satu sejarah, tapi kalaulah dia dilupakan ataupun digagalkan, sejarah yang kita tinggalkan hanyalah sejarah yang memalukan. That's all for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brother Asyraf, for the answer. I think it's interesting. Both panelists are giving the ideas from their own field. For example, Brother Asyraf from talk about judiciary, and Brother Anas talk about transparency. So I think that's it from the Q&A. So lastly, we, as a conclusion, as a conclusion, this is for both panelists. Before we call it a day, are there any encouraging words that both of you can share to those who are going to vote for the first time? Maybe there are tips or for the youngster to choosing a candidate to be voted. I will pass to Brother Anas first.
Thank you very much, Brother Syahmi Amin. I think our discussion today has been very encouraging in terms of the way forward for Malaysia, for our electoral system after the amended Federal Constitution's article from 21 years old to 18 years old for the eligible voters. My advice, perhaps for the young voters in choosing candidate to be voted, is that first of all, you need to know that it is an amanah. It is a responsibility that are badged in your hand. On whom are you going to vote? Is that because the future of our country lies in your vote. Our system is a system that would require a majority of the political parties or coalition to be the government. Hence, each and every vote would count for the future of our country. And number two would be that we shall not be swayed by political rhetoric. There are a lot of rhetorics in our country. There are an increased usage of identity politics, usage on racial and perhaps religious politics. So we need to ensure that whoever that we vote, we must vote that those that are capable, those that will be able to do the roles that are prescribed for them. As an MP, what are the roles? As a state legislators, what are the roles? So please, we need to think on who do we need to vote. Don't vote in the party line because you like party A. Don't just blindly choose those from party A to vote, because you need to vote who will be able to serve you in your places or in your constituency. For example, if you live in Gombak, don't vote for someone that is a fraud, or someone that does not have a stance in politics, or someone that is greedy for power, or someone that is treacherous and likes to betray people. So I think these are perhaps the mindset before going into election. You need to think critically, as well as you need to ensure, or you need to uphold the amanah that is given to you. So I would like to thank again IRKHSSS, POSSA and QUSSA for the opportunity, and I am looking forward for the next webinar from IRKHSSS and others. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brother Anas. So I will pass to Brother Asyraf. Any final words?
All right, final words. So in this final round, I will divide into 3 messages of hope. All right, first message, as a constitutional law lover, my love towards the constitution is bigger than other niches of law. And that's the reason why I'm really passionate when there is issue of constitution. And my message is that this constitutional amendment is taking work for more than 40 years. It has been taken for more than 40 until 50 years to get this constitutional amendment being succeed. Hundreds of engagement being made to ensure that we have the 2/3 majority of the parliament from both houses to pass the law. And if we disregard this constitutional amendment, at the end, kita hanya menjadikan the constitutional amendment yang sia-sia. That's the first one. Second, this is the most important, I think. Message as student union officer. All right. I'm as the official for education office of the student union IIUM. Actually, we have a dream and planning something big on the national scale in the conjunction with the next general election 15. We want to make IIUM as I have never announced this thing in public. That's the reason why I'm quite impressed when Anas know my plan. But it's okay. I will announce this time. Okay, we want to make IIUM as one of the most highlighted university for the politician to attract the young voters. We want to encourage the political debate, and not just that, we want to make academic debate as our new culture. Perhaps after this, we will call on debate like Sadiq, Asyraf Wajdi, or even like our President IIUM SU punya suggestion, he want to suggest the debate on PAS vs DAP. Tak kisahlah sesiapa pun. We want all these politicians to come to our university. Why? Because they need to know, they need to get our vote for them to get the majority. And for them to get our vote, they need to have something that could be offered to us. So, as an advertisement, for those who are interested with this idea, do contact the Office of Education IIUM and be part of this project. And at the end, our purpose is when we show to the politician what we want from them, at the end, that's how we can be the boss to our politician and not politician become our boss. And lastly, as my hope as Malaysian, I think this is not only my hope, but everyone's hope. We want to get a better Malaysia. Malaysia yang bukan sekadar mampu bercerita tentang kejayaan lama kita, tetapi Malaysia yang sentiasa improve years by years. And penurunan usia mengundi ini is a big modern step for our country. And we, as youth, we need to show our maturity when we cast our vote later. It's not like only you it's only mature when you vote this party or this party. No, it's not like that. But instead, we need to look back to the reason of every vote that we will cast later. Is it we vote because of the political ideology, or because of the candidate, or merely because of we read that this particular politician is trending on the internet? For me, we need to consider everything, every single thing before we cast our vote. But the most important thing before that is we need to cast our vote lah. Jangan kita pumpang-pumpang, at the end kita tak vote pun. That's all from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brother Asyraf. Okay, thank you to both of the panelists. Okay, finally we come to the end part of our SICE Talk 1.0 Undi 18. I would like to say thanks again to the panelists for the informative and interesting talk, and not to forget to all the audience, thank you for your active participation, for the question, etc. So hopefully this presentation or this talk will be beneficial for everybody, and we will share them to our brothers and sisters. So thank you for your attention. I think that's it from me. Billahi taufiq wa hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Back to the MC.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you to the moderator and the panels for the speech and insight. Friendly reminder to the participants, don't forget to fill up the attendance and feedback form in the chat box before we end this program. Let us have our photography session first. So is Pak Pro ready for the photography session? I will count to 3. Okay. Okay. 1 and 2 and 3. How is it, Pablo? Do you get the picture? No response. I hope the picture was taken lah. Okay. Thank you again. Now we have come to the end of the program. I would like to express our utmost gratitude to the moderator, the panels, and all the participants for their participation in this program tonight. Not to forget, thanks to all the committees that have worked hard to run this program successfully. I hope that all students will gain knowledge and how to deal with this matter and resolve issues in accordance with Islamic teachings, as well as understanding the importance of voting. Once again, thank you everyone for gracing our program with your participation and presence. On behalf of the organizing committees, I would like to apologize if we have made any mistakes throughout the program. So let's end our program tonight by reciting Tasbih Kafarah and Surah Al-Arsh. Billahi taufiq wa hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And take care, everyone.